Bonnie Yates is here. She's an amazing special education attorney with the Tollner Law Offices. It is our pleasure to have her here to talk about your rights. So Bonnie, I think you're there. Hi, Bonnie.
Do I need to do something to my screen or no?
No, you're
Okay.
fine. Traven takes care of all that. There you are.
All right.
So how are you?
You do look skinny.
I'm not. Oh no, I have another 50 to go, but 40 is gone.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It's actually true. I mean, some of the concepts that I learned in ABA, I've carried over into the weight loss arena. You know, like, how do you not intermittently reinforce a bad habit in your brain? It's not really about standing up and eating a carrot. It's about, anyway, yeah. I just sent you something about that I think is so great. But I'm really getting way off topic. So, hi, everybody. I'm from Tollner Law Offices. I'm a parent of a grown young man who was diagnosed with autism at age 4. And luckily, I mean, talk about simple twist of fate, I was referred to CARD, and he did a full ABA program through CARD. And it was certainly 30 hours a week, if it wasn't 40 hours a week. And once you get used to just having your whole life be an ABA triage, and you realize you'd be doing the same thing if your kid had leukemia, you wouldn't check him out of the hospital for 10 hours a week. I mean, so ABA is a full check-in, and nobody says it's easy, but boy, some of us got great results. So
yeah, I mean, your son is one of my favorite people on the face of the planet.
He's a pretty amazing guy. And when he was a little kid, I couldn't tell that he had the personality that he does as a human being. CARD gave him that. So, and he was inspired by CARD to work so hard. Our kids are really hard workers.
Some of your genes and some of your husband's genes too. And you can see that in him. He's a remarkable human being.
I mean, the more little kids I hang out with, the more I think most of them aren't slackers. They're busy human beings, and they want to learn. They want to learn, and they want to be positively reinforced. And anyway, we're supposed to be talking about special education here. So I'm going to tell you that Tollner Law Offices is nice enough to let me take time out of my busy schedule and do this, as often as we can. We're a multi-attorney firm. I think we're over 10 attorneys now, and I haven't counted. And we're also expanding our LA office, which is great. So I've always got somebody to, pick their brain if I don't know the answer. And we feel pretty confident that we can deal with these big school law firms because we're big too. And, we can't really be pushed around the way a single person can, a sole practitioner. If you need a specific consultation about your specific problem, you should do so in the state that you're in. If you're not in California or Arizona, that would be an attorney in your state. We recommend you to COPA, COPAA.net for their attorney directory. If you're in California and you want to talk to us and have a free consultation, we can make it happen. And so what we're doing here is giving general advice. We're not giving specific advice about any specific case, although people do ask questions on the air, but there's really no substitute for sitting down and getting somebody to focus on your problem. And most attorneys will do it for free. So, why wouldn't you do that? And, I was thinking about something a couple of days ago that I want to pass on. I have a lot of clients that are attorneys, and they're not attorneys in the special ed field, and they don't feel comfortable with special ed at all. But what they do know, because they're attorneys, is that attorneys get much more stuff from people than people get by themselves. And I'm not saying that to sound like I think I'm hot stuff, but I've done a lot of analysis of what goes on in these cases and the kind of results people get, kind of lowball offers districts will make unless you push their back to the wall. And it isn't fair, but let's get practical. So Shannon has a question, and then I have some kind of beginning of the year stuff for people to start thinking about. So
cool.
Read the question.
So Parker had written into us before about school refusal, and I mentioned to you, Bonnie, that we talked with Dr. Grampiche about this from a behavioral standpoint, about what do you do when the child is refusing to, or the teen is refusing to go to school. We're seeing much more of this during COVID, and as we're coming out of COVID, and kids are being told that they have to go back to school, that some of our kids are saying no. So Parker asked if I would also ask this question of you, that legally, what are your thoughts on, and what are the rights, and what can a parent do legally when a child or a teen is saying no, I don't want to go back to school?
Okay, it's a great question, a really good question, and it has several pieces. I was minding my own business and participating in a meeting of attorneys in our office, and Amanda O'Neill, who's the attorney at Tollner that's also licensed in Arizona, told me that there's a new diagnosis that I think is going to be in the DSM in the future, and it's called something like digital dependency syndrome or something like that. It's basically kids who were online constantly because of online school and because their parents sort of threw up their hands during the pandemic and said, well, what are we supposed to do? And they are really having a hard time now that they're supposed to decouple with their computer and go back to regular life. So there could be a lot of reasons that somebody would become more phobic as a result of the public health crisis that we've had. To some extent, it might just be, like a learned behavior. It's like you get rusty if you don't use those skills. If you're in the house for 18 months, of course, you're going to be more apprehensive. I think the more typical kiddo reaction wasn't not to be nervous about going back to school, but it was a manageable amount of nervousness. It was coupled with excitement. It was, I want to see my friends. This is obviously the kind of anxiety that becomes unmanageable for the person. So first of all, districts always reject this, and they always want to blame it on home problems, not home programs. They like to blame things on home programs too. But anyway, home problems. If you can't get your kid to school, it's your fault. Well, from a behavioral perspective, the trigger seems to be the going to school. There seems to be a clear nexus, particularly if you can get your kid to go out of the house to do other things, right? And so I think you have to have an immediate IEP meeting to discuss what's happening and to get the school to offer behavior services and kind of wraparound services to come into the home and work with you to get the student from the home, back into school. I have a case like this that predates the pandemic, and student hasn't been to school for 4 years. He doesn't have autism, but he has a lot of anxiety. And so I'm kind of watching to see what LA Unified does after 3 due processes where they haven't fixed things. And they're putting together a behavior team and wraparound services to gradually reintroduce him into school. Now, if you just are not at that point yet and you just want to buy some more time, I'm sure Shannon's already mentioned that a lot of the districts are offering a virtual option alongside of regular education, whether your district does or not. This year you have to check, and it might be changing again because we're seeing alarming resurgence of the virus now in California. Anyway, if you can't go back to school, if you're not ready to go back to school, if you're not ready for health reasons to go back to school, you can give the district written notice that you're going to make your student a privately placed student as a response to the district's failure to offer a free, appropriate public education. And here's how the mechanism of that works. It's not like disenrolling and suddenly you're not their responsibility anymore. You're stressing the fact that you want them to participate in school, you want their IEP to be implemented, but you can't get them to go to school, and it's making them worse when you force them, and it's a bad power dynamic for you to be, particularly with an older person. What are you supposed to do? Wrestle them into the car? It's dangerous for everybody. So the law does allow you to create a private school in your home. That's why people are allowed to homeschool in California without being labeled as truant. The process is amazingly simple. You go to the California Department of Education website and you fill out a private school affidavit, which is 2 pages long. You aren't required to have any particular curriculum. You aren't required to have any particular rules. You aren't required to do anything other than register, really. And so if you're going to continue to do homeschooling and there's no curriculum, online curriculum available, you may have to purchase a virtual curriculum from Laurel Springs, or the state of California has a free curriculum, and you could continue the education that way, although it's not mandatory. It's your private school. You can really do whatever you want. That doesn't solve the ultimate problem of the child needing behavior support and therapy and reintegration services. That's what your IEP team discussion is going to be about. And if you can't fix it at the IEP, I think it's a really strong case for due process. But the point is, while you're sorting this out, if you have to keep the child home, there's a legal way to do it without running into truancy problems. Does anything about what I described, Shannon, the hows of how you set up a private school, does that give rise to any questions? Usually people have trouble with it. They're like, no, it's too easy. I don't understand.
I think the part that mystifies me, that I have questions about, is that it sounds like you're not required to state what your curriculum is, but I think most of us want our kids to have a robust curriculum. So if you do want a curriculum, and you did say that the state of California offers a free one, but there are also other ones that are out there that I know several people who've done a home program that they got to pick and choose. I think the question everybody has is, who pays for that?
Well, that depends. Okay, if you do Laurel Springs, that's a private curriculum. You pay for it. That's what we did when my daughter was in 12th grade at Culver High, and she's like, I can't do this. Like, I'm getting A's and I'm like falling asleep in class. Mm-hmm. So we paid for it. It was $5,000 then. It's probably more now. There are other private curricula. You have to price them. And there may be other public ones too that are available. Here's the thing I want to say about that. If you sign up with another district, like a charter school or a virtual school in another district, to get the curriculum, and I've had people do this, it changes you from a resident of, let's say, Los Angeles Unified School District to wherever the charter school is chartered. So if you're taking your kid out of school, but you want to preserve your claims, let's say against Manhattan Beach Unified School District, make sure you don't put your child in some other charter school where you lose your eligibility to special education in the first district. So with the state of California curriculum, that's not an issue. But, like with some of these other ones that people have come to me with, they're already signed up and I'm like, hey, wait, like we want to pursue funding from your home district. And now you've just established yourself as a district of, DEF school or something. So that is an issue.
And if you stay in your district, though, there is the potential that you can get some funding from your district if you're proving that they are not, what they offered you wasn't appropriate for their child.
Well, if they aren't getting you reintegrated into school and they didn't obviously manage the situation well during COVID, or this might not have developed, then they owe you compensatory education. And I thought earlier in the summer, we had talked about compensatory education, but we could talk about it some more. But here's the basic analysis. In March of 2020, all the schools closed because of COVID. And the public schools thought they were going to get a waiver from the federal government, and whatever they did was going to be good enough. In May 2020, Betsy DeVos announced that there were going to be no more waivers. And so that meant that all the federal rules and all the state laws about IEP and implementation of IEPs was going to continue. And so all of a sudden the districts were scrambling because they didn't have their free pass. Everybody's experience is different. Everybody's documentation is different, but we have a lot of experience now with people that didn't get much or any help during COVID. And, I have one kiddo who he went from, I think, a 30-hour full-time behavior program to 2 hours a week. Another family, they're only contacted once. So here's the thing that's been really interesting to see. I had theories that the districts were going to be in trouble just based on the waiver issue and things that school district attorneys were saying to me. But I'm getting so many settlements now without even having to file for due process
Yeah.
because people are viewing that time period, if they're from the district or if they're advising the district, as their attorney, they're reviewing March to at least the end of ESY as radioactive, nuclear, and needs to be settled. So you should, if you have a school refusal issue following COVID, I don't know why you wouldn't consult with an attorney and pursue that strongly with the district, because you want to get your kid back in school. You want to have the right team to help you do that. No cutting corners, because the districts are cheap if they think they can get away with it. And you don't want to wait another 6 months, because every month you wait, the anxiety, I think, is unfortunately going to increase. So that's my thinking about that particular subject.
Would it be overgeneralizing, overstating it to say that if you feel that your child's needs were not met during COVID, you need to get an appointment with a lawyer really today to seek compensatory education right now, because now is like the beginning of the end of when that's really going to be possible?
Well, no, because there's a 2-year statute of limitations.
Okay.
Okay, so the 2-year statute would run in March of 2022. But if there are things like, what is the term? The cultural zeitgeist right now, school district cultural zeitgeist, is they're in the mood to settle these things.
Yeah.
And the mood may change, the money may run out. So I don't want to create more anxiety by saying you have to do this today. But I think today or this week or next week is a very, very good time to do this.
Yeah, I think in terms of that there's a certain amount of money allocated to this, and I feel the urgency for families that it's like, go in and get some.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see how the urgency of all of this changes over time.
Yes.
There may also just be a certain kind of numb factor that develops, like, oh yeah, you were another kid that didn't get schooling for 18 months. Well, I know a lot of kids like that.
Yeah. We can't have that be our kids. But you said, thank you for answering Parker's question. You also said that you had some stuff to get us, because for a lot of people, they're going back to school in like 2 and 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I can't even believe it's already that time of year.
It is that time of year. And potentially even that time of, well, no, it isn't that time of month. It'll be that time of month in August. Okay, so I'm just giving you some stuff from the opposition's website. Okay. So this is from Special Ed Connection. Young children with autism and significant needs who are returning to the classroom after the pandemic may already be uneasy and overwhelmed. Add a disorganized special educator into the mix, and schools have a recipe for meltdowns. Special education directors may want to ensure that teachers have strategies to keep things organized so they deliver effective instruction without distractions in the classroom. Otherwise, children's learning may suffer and they may not make progress toward their IEP goals. Organization is going to be critical when children come back, said Amy Miller, an educational consultant at the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, whatever that is. An integrated system is key. Having a system that flows so student assessment guides your programming, which guides the materials you're selecting to use to teach, is important. It's critical to have all that organized so instruction can be efficient and effective. So these are some ideas to share with teachers. One is post a large schedule in the classroom. Another is organize reinforcers. Encourage teachers to cut slits into a portion of an over-the-door shoe organizer with see-through compartments, then use ribbon to tie it around them as an apron. Put the student reinforcers in these clear pockets so the students can see what's available to them. If they see it, it becomes more valuable and they are more likely to do something to get it. I read that one because obviously you could do the same thing at home.
Yeah, I like that.
For items that won't fit in an apron, ask teachers to put together a rolling cart for each child that has drawers. So this is like the dessert cart at the restaurant, right?
It's dim sum.
Yeah. Have them dedicate a drawer to reinforcers. A clear bin on top of the cart can contain all the reinforcers the student knows how to ask for, and the teacher can move a reinforcement from the bottom drawer to the top bin after the student has mastered learning to ask for the item during instruction. Keep a list on the side of the cart in alphabetical order to save time when looking for a reinforcer. Here's the last one. Keep data collection simple. The other drawers in each child's rolling cart can contain program data and teaching materials. Teachers may want to assemble a three-ring binder for each student. It can also contain a student's IEP and behavior intervention plan. Teachers should always be able to quickly reinforce what a student knows, what they're learning and what they're going to learn. They can use a skills tracking sheet and graph a student's progress on multiple skills as they go so they can see if a specific skill is increasing. They may also want to use a clipboard for the data of the day and the week. As soon as you take the data, make time to graph it. That way you can make changes in instruction right away. If it's not easy to take, the data won't be taken or won't be taken correctly. The system has to be easy enough to be used, but it's that it guides your instruction. So those are some thoughts that you could share with your child's teacher. You could also obviously implement these strategies at home, but that's kind of what they're talking about, getting back into school at the beginning of the year.
Well, I love and applaud the idea of being organized. I agree that being, when somebody is disorganized, it doesn't help our kids' programs at all. But I'm kind of like, as a former teacher, I'm overwhelmed by the idea of, whether you're in a special ed classroom and you've got 13 kids, so now you've got 13 carts, rolling carts, which
Maybe, or maybe you're just going to have one for the entire class, but it's going to be a really motivating reinforcer.
That makes more sense to me. And then I'm picturing if your kiddo is not in special ed, if they're in inclusion program, one of the things that we always found was the teachers were very concerned about having my kids stick out. So any reinforcement thing that they would do for my kid, they would do for everyone, which we actually loved. So I love the idea, there were many classrooms that he had a treasure box and that he could earn tokens to go trade something from the treasure box, but so could all the other kids.
Yeah,
and those kids loved it. That wasn't see-through. I like the see-through idea, especially for the younger kids. But I love that we're including reinforcement and being organized and looking at taking data in an efficient way, because I agree, if it's not easy to do, it's not going to be taken well. I like that.
As I said, this is my opposition research. I have two more quick items if we have time.
Yeah, we got time.
Okay. So the next one is 3 things to know about doctor's notes in 504 eligibility. So for 504 eligibility, you have to show that you have a disabling condition that essentially requires accommodation in order to learn in the general classroom. But I thought this would be good for you to hear, just in terms of people are having to get doctor's notes for other reasons. And I know I consulted with somebody in the last few months that needed a medical exemption for the vaccines. And we learned that since I looked at it last a few years ago, each doctor is only allowed in California to write 5 a year, and they have to register with the state. So they've cracked down on those. But anyway, here's some stuff to consider. In interpreting evaluation data and making placement decisions, the 504 team, or the IEP team, must draw upon information from a variety of sources, including aptitude and achievement tests, teacher recommendations, physical condition, social or cultural background, and adaptive behavior. This may include information contained in a doctor's note or report, although it doesn't have to. When a 504 team is evaluating a student for eligibility, this could be equally applied to an IEP team, and is presented with a doctor's note, the following can help the team decide how to proceed. 1, districts cannot require a parent to bring in a doctor's note to qualify a student for 504, but it might be a good idea. I commonly hear people say without a doctor's note, you cannot qualify, but that's not correct. This often happens in cases of ADHD or asthma. A parent will say, my kid has ADHD and needs extra time on tests, but the district doesn't believe that. So it says, unless you bring a doctor's note in, we won't make your child 504 eligible. Districts cannot do that. The district might instead consider other pieces of data, such as disciplinary actions for impulsive behavior and teacher reports for the student with ADHD. There's not one source of data that's mandated or that is automatically thrown out. We can't say you have to have something, and we can't say you're not allowed to have something. We'll consider everything. So here is an instance where this issue came up. In Marshall Joint School District number 2 versus CD, when a doctor stated that a student with a rare joint disorder needed adapted PE and the district did not agree, the court ruled in favor of the district. A physician's diagnosis and input on a child's medical condition is important and bears on the team's informed decision on student needs, but a physician cannot simply prescribe special education. The Marshall case tells us a doctor can't write a prescription for special education, but if you want a doctor to write why they think a student needs accommodations, have them write it. The team will discuss the doctor's comments at the meeting, and it might help the parents feel like they have more skin in the game to bring it. Ask for consent to speak to the doctor. Even this is the school district talking to itself. Even though the school district cannot require a doctor's note, the district can ask for a doctor's note, and the district can ask to talk to the doctor's office when they receive a note. Many times the doctor may simply scribble a note saying kid needs special education on a diagnosis pad. I rarely take a doctor's note at face value, regardless of whether or not you'll have an argument about eligibility. When a parent brings in a doctor's note, my first question is, can I have consent to talk to the doctor? Some parents are uncomfortable with providing this consent. If that's the case, offer to schedule a time where they can be in on the call. You can say, hey, mom and dad, we'll schedule a time for the school doctor and parent to discuss the needs of a child. If the parents turn you down, document that you've tried to seek consent to speak with the doctor's office and the parents have denied it. So that's just some information for those of you, if you're getting doctor's letters for whatever issues starting the new school year, make sure that they're not too general and they're tied to the facts. As I said, if you need an accommodation, explain why. Don't just say he has ADHD, or he has a processing disorder. Be very factual. Okay, so one more thing. Quickly, right?
Yes.
Title 10 prohibition extends to discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. I wanted to bring this up. I don't know how much it's going to mean to listeners on the show right now, but we have a lot of teenage kids, and particularly those in placement, residential placement, who are coming out as trans or non-binary or LGBTQI, etc. So basically, what this is telling educators, the Special Ed Connection, is schools should be prepared to respond to claims of discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity as provided in the Title 10 Prohibition of Discrimination, quote, on the basis of sex, unquote. So the point about this is Title 10 is thought about as, Title 9, not Title 10, Title IX, Title 9 is thought about as a statute that protects women against, discrimination in sports, basically.
Right.
And what they're wanting to point out is that's not the limit of responsibility for the school district. Students with disabilities are among subgroups most susceptible to discrimination based on their identities as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or questioning, according to Education Exclusion, Dropout, Push Out, and the School to Prison Pipeline among LGBTQ youth. That's a resource. It's called, it's the School to Prison Pipeline is a common topic that we could talk about on the show sometime. Moreover, the national report released in 2016 by GLSEN Inc. revealed that LGBTQI students with disabilities are more likely to face school discipline dropout and become justice involved when compared with their peers. OCR's interpretation of Title IX, discrimination on the basis of sex, encompasses discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. It stems from the United States Supreme Court decision in Bostock versus Clayton County, which reasoned, quote, it is impossible to discriminate against a person for being homosexual or transgender without discriminating against that individual based on sex. So that's just something else to be aware of. Not that it's necessarily going to be you, but it might be somebody you know, and this is a very vulnerable population of student, and especially now.
Absolutely, and they deserve to be protected. Good heavens. Bonnie, we're past time, but it was important that we get all that information out. Tell them really quickly where to find you at Tollner Law Offices.
My email address is byates@tollnerlawoffices.com, and my phone number is 310-245-1968. How's that?
That's pretty good.
That's
That's
a
pretty
pretty direct
specific.
line in. Yeah.
All right. We adore you. I hope we see you next week. Thank you so much for being with us. Want to
Next week's
remind everybody.
good.
Tomorrow we have something really important on the show, you guys. We're covering the research topic. There's a new thing out that's questioning, that comment that we always make, that people on the spectrum are more likely to be the victims than to be the perpetrators of a crime. There's a new study out that seems to suggest the opposite. We've got somebody who can take that apart and dismantle it, and I think we all need to hear how that dismantles.
What
So
time
that's
is that, Sharon?
that's going to be tomorrow. So we'll see you guys then. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Thanks, Bonnie.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching Autism Live. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.